Well, how nice is this? We get to sit in a beautiful home and I get to chat with Emma Stevens from Flint Group.
Thank you.
About all things property.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here. Thank you, Cinty. And it is a gorgeous property. I'm feeling very fabulous sitting in this beautiful light. It's lovely. It's absolutely stunning in here. So thank you.
And I know that you're a really experienced broker. You've got a lot of background in helping, especially women, invest in property, whether it's their first home, dream home, or investment property. So is it okay if I just ask you a few questions about where women are at?
Absolutely. Go for it. I would love to tell you about where women are at. It's what I like to talk about all day long.
I think from 000 Property, what I love about what we do is that we get to help, obviously, women and men.
Yes, I do too.
Who are really positive about their future and see that, building wealth through property is just one avenue. They're generally responsible, proactive people. So I think that's what I love about what I do, which is probably the same for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So look, to give you a bit of insights around, where women are at the moment in the property space is I'm finding more and more women are actively taking the steps that's necessary to tidy up their finances and learn more about their finances. So not just specific to property, but across the board. There's, lots of amazing websites and platforms and communities out there, guiding women around understanding their superannuation and what is an ETF. And more importantly, my space is, how do women build wealth through property? So as you're aware, I've, started a community called SheInvests, which is powered by my mortgage business called Flint. Flint recently, kicked off earlier this year with the goal to be Australia's #1 independent brokerage, and we're already on track to hit that goal. But more importantly, I'm here to focus on the female niche nationally. So I want to create an opportunity for more women to access, the ability to purchase a property. But I want to take it a step further than that. I want to open up the conversation around, well, what about the next property? Is this even possible?
Yeah.
Of course it's possible. Let's surround you by the experts, such as people like yourself. And of course, all the other trusted advisors that we have in our finance village, as we call it, and start looking at, what do we need in order to get there?
Yeah.
And so, in a nutshell, the statistics that we recently shared from the CoreLogic now Cotality data is that I think men were around about 64% in home ownership, and women just behind at 62%. So
it's very comparable, which is it kind of did surprise me.
Absolutely. I think, these numbers are really going to shift in the future, just simply because more and more women are actively taking the steps necessary to get an investment property. And also, I think there's a lot more women going out there and doing things on their own than once before. And part of the reason why I advocate so strongly for women is because there have been a lot of women who may not have ever really got help from anybody else had they not had the right experts sit down and truly understand their situation and work with them to get the outcome that they deserve.
Yeah, especially with property, like it is a long term. It's a big decision, so it's not something that you want to take on lightly. And I mean, personally, for me, I bought my first home with my husband when I was 21, and a few years later went and we bought an investment property, and it was really, really tough. I sold a car, did everything possible back then to get into the market. Going on for that, like it's been a fair few years since.
It's only been a couple of years.
It has been a fair few years since we bought our first home, but I think such a big part of it is mindset.
Totally.
If anyone knows me and my husband, I'm probably less of a risk taker than he is. And so, the journey that we've been on, it has been probably, sometimes I think it's more uncomfortable for me in the decisions that we've made with property, but you can see now, like I think it's been, it's nearly getting closer to 30 years since we made that first investment, that it really does pay off.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course, we've been so fortunate just to have great people around us as well.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, look, I totally agree. Property is a long-term game, and it's something that a lot of people will typically now look at, how long is someone living in a house for. It might be 20 years or more, but more and more these days people are changing things after 5 years. But that investment piece, as one very, experienced investor when I first started in the bank and moved to Noosa had told me, it's a long game. Like those who really win, it's all about the long-term investment. Like, only sell if you have to sell. So, taking that piece of advice, obviously, into my own experience, because I too bought property when I was in my early 20s. And, had I sold early, I definitely wouldn't have made the gain that I did later on in life. And I did have to sell, unfortunately, due to, a divorce and whatever. But, hey.
And I think that's the thing, like, life does throw up difficult circumstances. And I know a lot of, for women, they're finding that they're by themselves when they didn't think that they would be, or however life turns out. What is from your perspective, what are some tips, or what can women do to reposition themselves?
Yeah, so my biggest tip is you don't know what you don't know. So even if you think it's not possible to be able to purchase or to go ahead and afford a loan, you have to sit down with myself or a broker, some finance expert who's actually going to be able to tell you what you can afford to do, and then obviously put in place the agenda or the plan, such as how much of a deposit you're going to need. If you don't have the full deposit, it's not the end of the world. There are other avenues that we can look at outside of that. That comes into guarantor support. That goes to look at, well, where has your money gone over the last couple of years? Has it been the rent? Has it been additional repayments? Where has that money been going? All of these things help build part of the genuine savings policy that banks will need if you have a lower deposit under 5%. The other thing to consider is, there is lender's mortgage insurance, and, even if you don't qualify, for the other incentives that avoid having to pay that. I mean, I paid lender's mortgage insurance when I first bought, and I would not be where I am today without it. And if I had have saved and saved and saved, the goalpost would have moved, and it would have been less achievable for me to actually buy that property in the market that would have taken me to save the money.
Yeah.
So I think one is absolutely have the conversation and work out what is possible.
Yeah.
It may not mean that it's straight away, but at least it's understanding what those actions are.
I really hate to generalise, but I feel like as women we try to tend to have everything sorted ourselves, and that we've got to have it all together first, rather than like, okay, this is my situation, this is where I want to get to.
Yeah.
Help me.
Yeah. And that is so true. And that's one reason why women are really great investors. Like, people have said over the years, when they compare women to men, when it comes to investing, they tend to say men are more emotional and they can tend to be a bit more risky and a little bit more like the gambler, make really, knee-jerk reactions off the back of, a market falling or what have you, whereas women tend to really think things out. And yes, we like to have everything all in order before we make decisions. However, the perspective of not doing anything can also cost you.
Yeah.
So when you start to understand and you throw the balls up and go, well, I either A, do this and I understand what it's going to take, or B, I don't do it, what is that going to cost me by not doing it?
Yes.
So recently I had a first home buyer, which is now an investor, and she told me that, we refinanced her home, got her on a better rate, and then talked about the investment property, which she was really curious about and wanted to do it. But then she came back and said, I want to get all my ducks in a row first. She didn't need to get all her ducks in a row other than going through the exercise of getting a home loan approval for the investment property, because she already had the savings. From that first property she purchased, she's now got over $400,000 in equity. So the cost of waiting.
Yes, that's it.
There was no need other than for her to get comfortable with what needs to happen and get her head around it and talk to all the right people. Once she's done all of those things, we've now got her approved for an investment home loan. Well, now she's actually, it's all about perspective and opportunity. Yeah. There's no need to wait for that perfect moment anymore because she's already got herself there.
Well, the other thing I think women tend to do as well, like, okay, life is full. We're all in that together. Yeah. And we've got managing career, finances, often family. And so those goals, which is, buy the investment property or get started or whatever it is, do tend to go to the bottom.
Absolutely.
So
because life gets in the way. Because you can have a plan and it can all go to whatever, you know, whatever the next, you know, sudden unexpected milestone or event to happen. So I think, you know, this is like, you know, obviously a really common thing for most people is you can put a perfect plan in place and be ready to execute and then something happens. I think when you go ahead, if you've already gone through the process of having an investment property and your own property or whatever it is, borrowing money, I think a really important thing that I tell all my clients to do is sit down with a financial planner and make sure that you also have looked into your risk protection, all the things that you can do to help as a secondary option or protection, ensure that the hard work that you've put together to get to A, B, C, that it's not lost over that unexpected event or whatever that might be, which means that you don't have to sell anything or do anything. You can just, you know, sit for a minute, reset, and then obviously when you come through that time, you can then replan and move forward with whatever the next possible option is.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, one of the things that we often talk about, or the first thing we talk about, is gathering that expert team, because like we're just property. That's our skill set. That's our expertise. We value having that expert team. You as a mortgage broker, your conveyancer, the financial planner, your insurance, all that covered, so that you've got it helps risk profile and just it's all part of long-term planning, your goals, your strategy.
It's the financial independence and the financial security, and they're the two main areas, you know, aside from being a mortgage broker. Every time I sit down with a client, the two main areas are talking through. It's up to people what they ultimately choose.
That's right.
But if you're definitely, if you're going ahead with building wealth for yourself, then you're putting a lot of, you know, risk on the line to not want to make sure that you've protected that risk, because you've worked so hard to get to where you are. So I think it's really important to understand that. Certainly I know that I've been in a position where it has absolutely been critical and, really important to have those options in place. But getting back to, you know, the women piece and getting into property, I think it's a massive surprise to what people think they can do versus what they're actually able to do in a really positive way.
Yes.
So when I do sit down and I assess some situations, people are really quite, flabbergasted at the outcome. They really didn't have any idea that that was going to be possible. So, I absolutely think that, you know, you definitely need to actually look at what it is and what you want to achieve long term. Yeah.
It's all about that long-term goal. So it's really interesting. When we look at the research, that same, the totality about women investing in property, that women actually are underrepresented in all investment classes compared to men. What do you think?
Well, that's that gender equity piece, is it? I guess that comes into that gender equity piece, but
because women do still earn less, have more time out of the workforce, and I think tend to also retire earlier, and of course with less superannuation.
And live longer.
Yes. And live longer.
No, you're absolutely right. Look, I think I think we're on this cusp of, you know, it'll take a long way to close the gap completely, but I think it's an exciting decade to be a part of. I think for women, just in the finance industry alone, more and more women, I think, are going to shift into leadership roles, into broker, owning their own business, simply because we have adapted. Like, we've got technology, we have AI, we're doing things differently. So I just think that simple change will flow on through to all businesses and all communities, which in return should flow on to, you know, putting more hands in putting more money in the hands of women, which obviously more hands, I say this around the wrong way, more money in the hands of women goes back into business and community and families.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I ask you, maybe for the young women out there who are wanting to buy their first home, we help first home buyers as well. To be honest, it's not. People think it's impossible. I don't think it's impossible. It is damn hard. It is really, really hard in today's market, but not impossible. What is your advice for a first home buyer?
Yes, you know, everything's hard for everybody everywhere at the moment. You know, with where interest rates have been, the cost of living, rent.
Yes.
Rent is insane. That same client that I helped purchase her home, you know, she would rent that out close to $900 a week now on the open market. So it's, you know, yes, it's hard to get into the property market, but if you're young enough and you think outside, you know, how you're going to be able to afford to do this, I definitely think that, you know, obviously through the home loan incentives, like we have the first home buyer, which some exciting stuff's changing in that space. Whether you're single or in a couple, they're increasing the caps from 125 to 150 or combined up to 225,000. So again, that's making it more affordable to step into the market, increasing the stamp duty, well, not increasing it, wiping it for the first, you know, new builds is going to be a huge opportunity to, you know, getting into the market. So you think about that, if you're on your own and in the numbers do stack up for you, you can rent out rooms. Like, again, this girl has been renting out 2 rooms, 250 each, that's $500 a week. That is massive. Like, no wonder why she's saved enough money to be able to afford another property. So I think, yes, it's expensive to get in the market, but if you look at how expensive it is even to rent these days, looking at other options outside, you know, of perhaps parent guarantor support, parent gifts, or the first home buyers incentives, and also for single women or single men, you know, divorced, there's a 2% guarantee, which again, I helped another first home buyer and single mum, and, you know, from getting into what was affordable for her, she's now grown that deposit from $15,000 to $270,000.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So
I love that.
Yeah, so I think it's understanding, okay, well, what can you afford? And this is the conversation. I've got lots of people talking to me at the moment, and they're not ready to buy right now. Can they buy in the next 12 months? Maybe. Will they save enough deposit in 12 months? Maybe not. Are they in a position to get a gift from family? Maybe. Are they in a position to get additional guarantor support from family? Maybe. My hope is that we can get some of their genuine savings, maybe a little bit of a gift, because the affordability is there. If you look at what they're paying in rent, it's totally, if not more than what they'll be paying in a home loan mortgage repayment. Yeah. So it's definitely looking at the future aspect of, whilst I might not quite be there, if I'm not too far off, what other options do I have outside of, you know, this current, you know, landscape of what my finances are? Yeah. How do I get there?
I love that, because we've also helped our first home buyer purchase a townhouse on the Sunshine Coast. Now, we'd been working with him for quite a while too. He had to have everything ready to go because this particular development, it sold out within like a day. Yeah. But he was ready. He had all his ducks in a row, and so he could go ahead. Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, so that's, for me, from our perspective with the property side, that when you've got everything ready to go, then you can make the decision. You've still got cooling off periods. You've still got, and if you've got that great team around you, you're not feeling rushed. Yeah. You've still got those things in place, and to go, hey, but this is I'm comfortable. Let's go. Yeah,
absolutely. And, you know, in your space, again, talking to people who might be 12 months away from actually relocating or making the move, but again, they've got the income. So it's, what do they need in order to be able to do this in 12 months time / 2 years time? So if it is a new build, well, you've already got 12 months before anything's going to be signed and agreed on. And then you might have another 6 to 12 months before it's actually complete. And, you know, the payments and everything start to kick in. So that ultimately, getting in today, but 2 years later, ultimately is when you really start paying.
That's right.
So it's that planning stage of, you know, definitely looking at, okay, well, this is not costing me today. But if I wait 2 years to have the conversation, it's no.
It will be. Yeah. So, do you have I guess, how long does it take to get like documents together for a first home buyer? Like, you know, let's talk about some nitty gritty things.
Okay. Well, so the nitty gritty. So my background has been, you know, 2 decades in finance. I come from working in one of the big banks where It was pretty simple getting like a pre-approval in place. We just had to like put everything in and boom, there was a system decision, and then we chased up the paperwork. When I became a broker, oh my goodness, I was like, holy, this is a lot more than I anticipated to just get a couple of loan applications through, because we had to get so much information, because there's all this, policy and regulation around best interest duty, responsible lending, which still exists. However, because we have open banking, there's the credit reporting, which is open banking as well. So that's your credit report is not like the old days where it was just a credit report. It's, from every time you pay a bill on time, anytime you do something that's positive, that enhances your score. So a lot of the banks are relying on this report these days. Not all of them do, and some of them don't even look at it. But that in itself has helped the documentation piece, because once upon a time we had to go and gather all these documents and we couldn't lodge without it. Now we can pretty much get the bare minimum of what the lender requires, obviously enough to satisfy our own, additional inquiries around best interest duty and responsible lending. But that's where it's exciting, because even from 12 months ago to today, the documentation is becoming less and less. It's just making sure that you do have your ducks in a row when it comes to applying for the government incentive stuff. So that's been really imperative over the last couple of months. We've had a bit of I guess you would say, expectations around what the banks thought and how many spots they thought the government was going to have left with a first home buyer spots. And then we came right up into the end of financial year, and all of a sudden they were gone. And so there are a lot of people who actually thought that they had a spot available, and maybe they didn't have all their documentation in order. And that's not easy. It's not hard to do when you needed a notice of assessment in last financial years when you applied, but now we're in a new financial year. So guess what? You need a new notice of assessment. So you have to go away and do your tax return. So I think the most important thing is, getting that part absolutely lined up, ready to go, or being aware of it. So things to look out for with the new changes coming into place, and we don't know when they're coming. It's all, covered off in the media. But if you jump on the government website, they talk about the changes coming, but it hasn't come into effect, which is the income cap change for first home buyers, as well as the stamp duty, as well as the single parent. So the cap and the stamp duty, all of that's about to change. But if you were to apply now and you're on 150K and you bought something, because they haven't pulled the trigger on that change, you will still have to be under the 100. So you wouldn't qualify. So you might qualify in December, but right now, if everything was to go ahead, you won't qualify, because, your notice of assessment will be higher than the 125. So I think the most important thing is to get your head around that. For single parent guarantees, people come in and they, okay, all good. Oh, I'm divorced or I'm not divorced. You have to have a divorce certificate. So that's another funny thing. You've got to have a birth certificate.
Yes.
You've got to have these things that you might not have readily available, and it can be really frustrating when you think you've got everything else ready to go. Oh, yeah, I tick those boxes, and then you submit the application. Then they are the things that will, make it a longer process. But if we have everything that we need, it honestly takes days.
Yeah, I think it does seem like a mountain of paperwork sometimes, but it can be, if you're working with a great broker such as yourself, you're there to assist them and just make sure that, you can get everything together.
Yeah. So the best thing about, where we're at today is, if I have everything ready to go and it's all collected, like realistically, it can be 1 week, sit down, do the interview, understand everything, go away, do the strategy, come back. Yes, you're happy. Yes, we've got all the documents. Boom, lodge. 3 days later, we've got an approval. Amazing. If we find everything as far as a property to purchase or what have you, then, it's evaluation another week, and then it comes back all good. We're signing up loan documents the following week. Amazing. Loan documents are now digitally. Everything's now digital. That has saved a huge amount of time and, I guess you would say paperwork and, headspace around how do we get these signed and how do we get these back, yada, 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 yada.
Yeah.
So it's actually like the turnaround timeframes are super, super quick. An easy thing to note is that some banks will only have you approved for 3 months, and you may need to do a brand new application after 3 months. So I've got a client coming to me, and I've had lots of your clients that I've looked after in the past, and I have placed them with a particular lender based on the fact that, we had COVID and then we had all this rain. So all these reasons why builds might be put back. if you've got a lender knowing that that's a possibility, who will have a really long-term application. So some of the banks have gone from 6 months to 12 months to even longer. So just knowing that if you pick a bank that is going to have that application live in the system for a good period of time means you don't have to keep reapplying after 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But, yes, everything needs to be re-verified after 3 months if it is active. So you just got to make sure you got your pay slips or whatever.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And I know there's always challenges. There's always challenges. But I really feel like when you've got a great team in each corner, that, you know, you'll do okay.
Yeah, it's about having full transparency. I mean, one, everything can go smooth. If we have full transparency from a client, then we know what to iron out before we even get to the stage of doing the application, so that we try and make it as seamless as possible from the minute that we get it to the minute it goes through to the minute that, you know, everybody else starts to get involved. It should be a smooth handover from one person to the next.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, there's some other clients of ours who thought that for their first home, that they couldn't actually buy a detached house and that they would be in a townhouse. And we were able to find something that actually did meet their budget. And so it was really exciting to be able to do that. When you've it's all about the team.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. Yeah. Well, you feel like, you know, people can go off and do things on their own, but people want to sit down and be able to talk out their plans. They want to share their story. They want to talk through their future, and that's much easier to do when you've got a team of people around you.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks, Emma.
Yeah, no worries.